Hello and welcome back. In this video we will be analysing the highlights of practice game number 8. I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that game in its entirety to see how it led to this position here, but this is where the game was most interesting, and we will be analysing the game from this point on. White had this point anchored here, which wasn't too bad because holding checkers back in an anchored position is okay in case there's an opportunity for a hit, and having it advance somewhat on this point is a lot better than having them stuck back on this point here. So that wasn't too bad. Then White had an opportunity to run with one of the checkers, which again was quite a good strategy, because at this point White has got all of his checkers in his own quarter, anchored off very nicely, and one checker can still do a hit. And having held the one checker back in case there's a hit does put this checker at a little bit of a risk of being hit, but if he gets hit here, he just has to come back here again. He doesn't have far to come back again. Whereas if he does a hit, it's very advantageous, because if from this point on White does a hit, Black will be in all sorts of trouble, because he can only get back by rolling a 1, and if he doesn't roll a 1, White can anchor off with a variety of rolls. And let's say if Black did roll a 1 and get back in, unless it was a 6 and a 1 where he could get back in with the 1 and run with the 6, he'd be stuck here, and again on the next roll White could do a hit and an anchor with again a variety of rolls. So holding that checker back there was okay at that stage. Now the next thing that happened was Black rolled a 5 and a 4, which was somewhat lucky because, well, he had to play the 5 because he can't play a 5 inside here. So he had to play the 5 with his checker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, imagine if, well, Black would have been in trouble with the roll of a 5 and other combinations. For example, with a 5 and a 1, or a 5 and a 2, or a 5 and a 3, he would have been in trouble because he has to move that checker 5 spots. He has no choice. But what can he do with a 1 or 2 or 3? He can't rescue this checker, and that gives White an opportunity for a hit. And this is exactly the kind of reason why you hold this checker back. Likewise, Black would have been in trouble with a whole lot of combinations with a 6. If he'd rolled a 6, he would have had to hit here. With a 6 and a 2 or a 6 and a 1, he could have done a hit and anchor, but that would have left that checker on its own. So if White then rolled a 6 and a 3, he could have hit that checker and again had Black in all sorts of trouble. But what if Black had not rolled a 6 and a 1 or a 6 and a 2? What if he'd rolled say a 6 and a 3? Well, a 6 and a 3 would have been particularly troublesome because he would have had to do a hit with a 6 and then move that one 3 spots. So he would have, or not necessarily move that 3 spots, but move another checker 3 spots, but that would have left 2 checkers on their own. Again, that would have had Black in, well, in a very vulnerable position. So as you can see, with a combination of a 5 and whatever, or a 6 and whatever, Black would have had to leave a checker on its own, or in the case of a 6 and a 3, 2 checkers on their own. But that didn't happen. Black rolled a 5 and a 4, which was, well, somewhat lucky, considering a 5 and a 3 or a 2 or a 1 would have had him in trouble. Now what I've done, I've written the rolls for the rest of the game on a notepad to my left, which you can't see because the camera's focused on the board here, but white then rolled a 4 and a 2. At that point, I decided to run. I decided to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I'm kind of regretting that, because if it was a big roll like, well, a 6 and a 4, well, with a 6 white would have had to go, because would have had to run, because he can't play a 6 here. But let's say if he'd rolled a double 4 or a double 5, well, you could play it, well, with a double 5 he would have had to run. A double 4 he could have just played those 4 checkers here, but with a double 4 he could have just gotten that checker back home, which would have been fine, because that would have had things pretty much even. So 4 and a 2 was a little bit of a low roll. In retrospect, I think with a low roll like a 3 and a 1, or a 3 and a 2, or a 4 and a 2, or a 4 and a 1, white would have been wise to just leave that checker back there, not run for now, and just play something inside here. So I kind of feel I made a mistake by deciding to run with a 4 and a 2, but let's leave that checker there. Now, black then next rolled a double 4. Because I had decided to run, what black did was conveniently move those 4 checkers off the board and have white at a significant disadvantage. However, if this checker was left here, black couldn't have taken those 4 off the board, because he would have left that checker on its own. So black would have had to play a double 4 here, creating a candlestick here. But that's okay, because a candlestick on a low point, like the lowest point being 1, is just fine. Next, white rolled the 3 and a 1. And remember, if black had moved those checkers off, with the 3 and a 1, white would have hit that checker next. So, again, let's play like to keep. Now, here there's an odd number of checkers on that point, which means if black rolls a double 4 again, on his next roll, he has to take those 4 off, leaving that checker on its own. So let's play the 3 and a 1. We can just play 1, 2, 3, and 1. Next, black rolled a 5 and a 2, in which case you would take those 2 checkers off, because it's better to have an even number of checkers there rather than an odd number of checkers, because, as I said, an odd number of checkers could make you vulnerable to leaving a checker on its own, but with an even number you're pretty safe. White then rolled a 6 and a 1. Now he's got to run. So this is, with the combination of rolls that came in this game, this was basically at this point, white had no choice but to run, not being able to leave this checker on its back here any longer for a hit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1. Black then rolled a 2 and a 1, taking those 2 checkers off there. White then rolled a 6 and a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. Black then rolled a 5 and a 2, taking those 2 checkers off there. White then rolled a double 1, which means you would go 1 here, 1 there, take that one off, and move another one here. Black rolled a 3 and a 2, you would have to go 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. White rolled a 6 and a 4, taking those 2 off. Black then rolled a 3 and a 1, taking that one off. White then rolled a 3 and a 2, taking those 2 off. And at that point, black rolled a 3 and a 1, taking those 2 checkers off. And because I previously decided to run with a 4 and a 2 roll, that was how the game ended. There were no further rolls, because white conceded, or white had to concede at that point, the way I played the game previously. Now, one of the reasons I said go back and watch that game number 8 in its entirety, is because you will see that despite the fact that White ran it a little bit too early, White did not have to concede till virtually the very end. He still had a chance of winning with some doubles. And at this point here, Black is 3 rolls away from winning if he doesn't roll a double. But it is now White's roll. So if White rolled 2 doubles and Black did not roll any doubles, White could win. So from this point, if I was White, I would not concede. Definitely would not concede. So either way, as you can see, either way, Black was at a clear advantage, but still White basically fought the game till its very end. If you compare practice game number 8 to practice game number 7, that's also a very interesting comparison, because in practice game number 7, White was in an almost identical position. Instead of having 2 checkers back here, he had 2 checkers a little further up, and then rolled a double 6. Now remember, in this game when White had 1 checker on its own, well, rolled a 4 and a 2, and when we played the alternative, he didn't have to run till he rolled the 6 and a 1. So in this game, White wasn't so lucky with holding checkers back. But in practice game number 7, White held checkers back in case there was a hit, then rolled a double 6. And that totally turned the game around for White, because White moved those 2 checkers from Black's quarter very close to his own quarter, and that turned the game around because White then had checkers closer to his own quarter than Black did, and White ended up winning that game. So when you hold checkers back, one large roll like a double 6, or in this case, if Black had an unlucky roll previously, like a 5 and a 1 or 5 and a 2 or the 6s that we discussed, it could have turned the game around. So that's why it's quite interesting comparing practice game number 8 to practice game number 7, because in both games White was in an identical position, but in one game White ends up winning reasonably well, in the other one Black ends up winning reasonably well. So comparing those 2 games is very, very interesting. But anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time.